Welcome to you all. So let's flip across and talk a bit about CG Spectrum Institute. So CG Spectrum Institute is a relatively new entity that's been developed as a subsidiary of CG Spectrum. CG Spectrum has been in the industry for over a decade. CG Spectrum Institute is our accredited arm. That means that the degree programs that we're offering under CG Spectrum Institute are accredited in Australia by the Tertiary Education Quality Standards Authority. Now, as students, you don't necessarily need to know that. You just need to know that the fact that you're getting an accredited diploma and bachelor degree. But what it does mean is that it has currency, that it's recognized specifically in Australia, but also in other parts of the world where they recognize Australian degrees, which is the vast majority of global workplaces. So this is an accredited degree. When you come out, you got a diploma or a bachelor, depending on where you go under. But as I mentioned before, and you can see with some of the logos at the bottom of this slide, CG Spectrum Institute is of industry. We are of industry. Yes, we're an academic institution. We're in the education space. And a particular strength of our institute is the fact that not only the content has been developed in consort with industry, we actually have highly skilled industry partners on our curriculum advisory committee. So within the inner workings of our educational institution, we have industry advising what the content needs to look like, the way in which the degrees are formed, the learning strategies that are being embarked into the way in which we deliver these courses. And of course, we ourselves were founded by industry. We have 170 plus industry mentors that support all of our educational offerings around the globe. We've had over 4,000 students go through the virtual doors of CG Spectrum over our time, and they're in over 90 countries around the world. We are a true global online educator in this space. And the rookies in this year just noted us to be a top 50 creative industries school globally. I think specifically, generally speaking, in creative studios, we were number 25, which is extraordinary, really. Number 25 globally in terms of the creative schools. And of that top 25, those who were purely online, we were number 2. So in this space, we are a very high quality, high touch, boutique, focused on graduate outcomes educational institute. That's what we focus on. It's where our true north lies. It sits underneath everything that we do, in the way in which we design our courses, to the way we teach our courses, to who we hire to teach you when you study at CG Spectrum Institute. So that's a little bit about CG Spectrum Institute. You can look us up on cgspectrum.institute. You can look at our parent company at cgspectrum.com. You can read all of those reviews. You can go into the student explanations and see where we are positioned as an educator in the animation, visual effects, and game design space. Who am I? I'm the acting dean of creating faculty. I'm the dean of the business faculty. We also offer a diploma of business in CG Spectrum Institute, which is contextualized to the creative industries. And I've stepped in to drive the launch and the initial operations of the creative faculty. My personal passion is entrepreneurship, and it's something that we see as often with creatives that are in the creative industry space. Often you act as your own entity. You might be flipping from one job to another, acting as an independent artist or a game developer and working on jobs. A lot of this industry works on a job that is occurring and then teams that are formed around those jobs. And a lot of that involves entrepreneurial mindset in order to be able to operate that way. And that's my true north. That's what I've done my whole life. I am a multiple company founder myself. I've started tech-based blockchain agricultural technology companies, veterinary clinics, a whole range of different businesses. But I've also been in the tertiary space for about 20 odd years, leading the development of entrepreneurship education space. I remain current by being an advisor to entrepreneurial ventures. I do corporate consultancy in the innovation strategy space, and I judge the Australian Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. So I'm seeing what's happening across the industry on a month by month basis. So let's look into what we're bringing to market. And we're I mean, if you can't tell from the way I'm talking to you, we are super excited about this offering. So we've got three discipline areas. We've got animation, visual effects, digital art, and game development. Within those three discipline areas, there are 10 specializations, and you can see those listed down there on the slide below. So you might have a particular interest in an area that might be a discipline area and be figuring which specialization you might go into. You might just be really keen to get into the animation and visual effects space. You want to get into the film industry or want to get into the game industry, and you're not exactly sure where that might go. On the call at the moment is Marcus. Marcus is our onboarding expert. He's kind of like the person who will be your first port of call if you've got an interest and you're trying to find. And if you've got a bit of uncertainty as to where you might head, Marcus can certainly help you in respect to that. There's also a bunch of blogs and material out there that we've posted that can guide you in there. So we're talking about three individual discipline areas when we go down into this space: animation, visual effects, digital art, and game development. Bit of a structure for how we're going to go today. We're going to go in and speak to some of our content managers, directors, and heads of department within those specialization areas. And we're going to talk about what those specialization areas are, what it looks like in terms of student work, and how that progresses through, what career pathways might look like in each of those discipline areas, and then a bit of an overview of the structure, so you can see kind of like the behind the scenes, the structure of subjects that you will go through, the learning experience that you will have when you invest into the diploma or the bachelor degree. So that's essentially the first component. We'll look into those, or to 5 of those specialization areas, and you'll get some first-hand knowledge from the head of department or the content manager or the director of each of those specialist areas. You'll find, as I've been advertising to you, that each of those individuals are highly experienced practitioners themselves, and they'll tell you a bit about themselves as they go through. We'll follow up the discussion of those specialization areas with an industry roundtable, and we've brought together 3 extraordinary individuals from those 3 areas, from animation, visual effects, from digital art, and from game design. And we're going to lead through a bit of an industry roundtable discussion, focusing on what it looks like in industry, what roles look like, what career progressions there are, what they look for in new hires, how they go about the talent acquisition and development process. So a whole bunch of discussion around what your career prospects might look like in industry, from industry. We'll look in after that industry roundtable to a real unique strength of these degrees, which are our core strain subjects. So not only will you learn technical capability in these diploma and bachelor degrees, you will also learn the critical, what I like to call like the soft skills, the types of skills and capabilities that mean you will hit the ground running in your job and know how the industry works. You'll understand pipeline processes. You'll understand file naming protocols, things that usually graduates from educational programs have to learn on the job as they go. Embedded into our degrees are a set of core subjects that allow you to hit the ground running once you hit the industry. Learning about negotiation techniques, how to build budgets for jobs, all of these things that you typically learn through experience on the job, but we're bringing that forward into your educational experience. So Kathy and Sherilyn will lead you through that. We'll then go into another particular strength of the CG Spectrum offering, which is our community. Because once you're a CG Spectrum student, you're always part of the CG Spectrum community. It's a real strength of our positioning in the market, and Jeff is going to lead us through that bit and pieces. As I've mentioned, Marcus is our admissions guru. He'll take you through the admissions process if that's of interest to you, and then we'll have a bit of a live Q&A where you can go through. A reminder, there's a Q&A function on this webinar, and those are in place for you to be able to place questions, and then we'll be able to answer them orderly. You might also, just as you're going, have a question that is prompted through that Q&A session. Feel free to chuck that in the chat, and we can ask it as we go. So there you go, a bit of an overview as to what we're going to be up to today. A reminder, CG Spectrum is of industry. We're launching 3 discipline area higher degree programs, a diploma and a bachelor in both the animation visual effects, the game development, and the digital art spaces. And without further ado, let's kick into the first of our specialization areas. I'm going to introduce you to Brandon. Brandon is the head of department for our concept art specialization. Brandon, I'm just going to lead over to you. You can tell us a bit about yourself and why you're so awesome and how it plays out in your area. Over to you, Brandon.
Thanks, Baden. Thank you. My name is Brandon Reimken, obviously. I'm the head of department for concept art and illustration at CG Spectrum, and that represents our whole digital painting section. I have a degree in fine arts. When I went to school, there weren't schools like CG Spectrum, so I had to find other ways to train. So I went through a fine art program many years ago. And since then, I've spent 20 years in the industry, namely video games, tiny bit in film and TV, but mainly in video games as a studio concept artist and as a freelance concept artist, which I still do to this day. So I've worked on projects for EA, Activision, Microsoft, Disney, Capcom, to name a few, a bunch of smaller studios in there as well. So I bring a lot of that experience with me. So we can move slides here. So concept art, it's good to know what that is. So it's basically used as a blueprint for other disciplines to produce assets in games, film, and beyond. Sometimes print media. There's a lot of artwork that needs to be built for a lot of different entertainment products. We can break things down into basic categories, which would be characters, props, and environments. Of course, there's subcategories within those things, which hopefully cover everything that you'd need to visualize. And they can include key shot or mood illustrations that communicate narrative moments in a story. So we're not just producing assets. Sometimes we're producing final artwork that may see the audience directly. Skills and knowledge required. It does require a firm grasp on drawing fundamentals, including mark making, perspective, and anatomy of all sorts, as we tend to draw and paint a lot of those things. Knowledge of light, color, and composition are also key. Technical abilities and basic 3D modeling and sculpting knowledge. We use Blender and ZBrush. Are really good to have as they can augment your skill set in terms of producing the work. And we have those in our tools of the trade as well. We use Photoshop a lot. Procreate is in there. It's getting better. It doesn't have the full functionality of Photoshop, but you can do a lot of work in there as they're making it better and better. Blender, ZBrush, Clip Studio is another alternative to Photoshop that students can use. Photoshop still, at least for now, holds the crown in terms of its ability, but other things can be used to get a long way there. And so here's an example of a few things. We can just hit play on that video and show you some examples from some of our students in terms of their workflow process, all the way from thumbnailing, figuring out the composition, to moving forward into a final design. That one particularly is from one of our recent graduates, Oliver Harbour, who's awesome at what he does. And we have some other examples from some of our past students as well, who took part in the rookies program or the contest and did really well, actually. So really happy with that this year, and they did awesome work. And there was a piece there from me as well. So concept art careers. Film and games tend to be the kind of main area. You can be a generalist, you can be a specialist in character, environment, even props, look development artists in film. You can be an illustrator, obviously. And that does kind of cross paths with splash artists, is where you make illustrations Everybody loves illustrations, the splash art from League of Legends. That's what we get a lot of interest in our program because they're so awesome in terms of those big impressive pieces. So there's some of the careers that we would come across in concept art. In terms of the concept art specialization, in concept art, we start with developing visual concepts, props, and characters. We also look at rendering techniques and character drawing. So there's a whole bunch of things that have to happen from the thumbnails all the way into the final work. See the diploma level exit at that point. If you were to keep going, you would get into layout and level design and composition. So layout and level design being something from a concept art standpoint where you would visualize those things for, say, the game designers. Characters, creatures, and enhanced workflows. We do have a little bit of photo bashing in there. We include approaches with 3D products like Blender and ZBrush, which is great. And then after the concept art capstone, you would see the bachelor degree exit. So that would be an overview of all of these things. Of course, these questions, if you have more in-depth questions about these things, you can always reach out to people like Marcus.
Awesome, Brandon. I've actually just been doing some quality assurance on some of the content coming in for the course that's going to be kicking off next year. And one of them was the introduction to line drawing. And I just
Mm,
learned so much from just watching those instructional videos, like
excellent.
the discipline that sits underneath drawing for someone who's ignorant to that space. Just
Mhm.
that introductory video stuff was so powerful. It's been really cool to kind of see into those areas. So concept art. Often people that are in the concept art space themselves are quite creative. They're quite artistic in the way in which they have an inkling to be that way. And this provides you, I think, with the discipline and rigor that sits underneath that space.
Yeah, it's you have to build from the skeleton outward, right? And there's a lot of things at the base structure that you have to be good at so that you can add to those things. And I think our program does a really good job of doing that. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, cool. All right, so that's the concept art specialization. I'm going to flip across to Brian. Brian is the content manager for our 3D modeling specialization. Brian, tell us about yourself and why you're so awesome.
Hello, I'm Brian Bentley. I'm the content manager for 3D modeling. My specialization is in asset and creature development and technical direction, as well as just asset management, right? So building an asset, making sure it goes down the pipeline correctly. I have about 15 years experience. I've worked for Jim Henson. I've worked for Rhythm and Hues, which is the cute and fuzzy animal company, as people like to call it. They did Garfield, they did Golden Compass, they did the first Hulk movie. And then I moved on to ILM. So yeah, I worked at Jim Henson to begin with, which was bought by Disney, and then I worked at ILM, which was also bought by Disney. So I think it's me at this point. I think they're just chasing me around the world. So yeah. So I worked on Rango, Warcraft, Pacific Rim. So I've had a very, very lucky and fun career. So yeah, 3D modeling. What is 3D modeling? So there's tend to be a misconception about 3D modeling. I think it's just most people think it's just pushing points around and making fun stuff. I look at 3D modeling as it's a service-driven problem-solving discipline. So you take amazing work that you get from people like Brandon, and then you have to interpret that into 3D. Sometimes things don't work in 2D and 3D as they work in 3D. So it is your job as a 3D modeler to interpret that work and make it work in 3D. Sometimes joints don't work. Sometimes things don't move correctly in the same way as they do in 2D. And we kind of give you that discipline and that foundation in our school. It's not just taking a concept and just like blindly copying it. So a lot of times you have to do a fair bit of problem solving. So that leads into the skills and knowledge required. You know, you need to know about how joints work, about how mechanics work, about how human beings are put together. Like Brandon mentioned, we also build everything from the skeleton out. Things like muscle systems, things like skin systems. You need to know how all this stuff works so that your models will go down the pipeline smoothly and not have any problems. Things like UV layout, UDIM workflow. So it's a discipline that is vast in its required knowledge. And I think that's the beautiful thing about it. It is difficult, but that's the beauty of it. It's one of my favorite quotes is from this movie called The League of Their Own. And Tom Hanks is talking about baseball, and he's like, it's supposed to be hard. It's the hard that makes it great. And I love that. I love that about this discipline. So yeah, as well as new technologies, photo scanning, Gaussian splatting is all over the place right now. So it's a constantly evolving, constantly learning thing. Like you don't stop learning once you're done with school. In fact, your learning usually accelerates because new stuff comes out like after you're done with school. So if you have that ability to learn, which we try to instill in our students, it's a very, very advantageous thing. So our tools of the trade, number one is Maya right now. ZBrush is also king. Blender is making a really, really strong showing lately, especially from the 2.8 release into the 3 and into the 4. It's making a really strong showing. I do know some smaller boutique game houses are starting to use Blender because you can't beat the price. It's free $99. Substance Painter for your look development. Unreal Engine is also making a really strong showing in just the raw like keyframe animation space and rendering space. And then Houdini is also probably the most powerful 3D software on the market right now. So I would really keep an eye on that space. They just released a bunch of new animation stuff, a bunch of new modeling stuff. So yeah, it's a really, really exciting time to be here in this space, no matter what discipline you're going into. So these are some examples of some work. So this is some of the work. This is one of the shots I worked on Rango. So for Rango, I was a creature effects artist, which you can move into that space if you're in modeling. Creature effects requires a fair bit of modeling muscles, modeling clothing, modeling feathers, simulating feathers, modeling skin patches, that type of thing. To the left, you can see a character that I think I just finished that maybe a month ago. You can kind of see the Rango connection there. That's still stuck in my brain after all these years. And then on the bottom, we have two works by two of our students. The blacksmith there is one of my advanced students, Maxime, and this kid was I say kid affectionately, but he was amazing. And one of the things that his work really illustrates is iteration. He didn't just make that face over a weekend. That was rounds and rounds and rounds of iteration and review. And this needs to be fatter, this needs to be smaller, this needs to be higher, this needs to be glossy, this needs to be not. So that is one of the other things that we really kind of push is iteration. Like things just don't come out amazing. They start terrible for a really long time, and you iterate and iterate and iterate and iterate. And then that's the great thing about having a mentor is you have somebody that has proven their skills and knows what they're talking about that can be like, okay, this needs to change. Now show it to me again. This needs to change. Now show me it to me again. And then after, rounds of iteration, you get these amazing works. And I think this is true across any discipline that we teach. So 3D modeling careers, so many. Modeling is like maybe one of the oldest, at least traditional, like 3D disciplines. Like before you could animate anything, you had to have a model, even if it was just like a simple cube or a cube character. So it's very, very well established. It's used in almost every single industry, not only in games and films. It's used in advertising. It's used in manufacturing. It's used in marketing. It's used in fashion. I've done a fair bit of fashion pre-visualization and fashion digital fashion work during COVID. Digital fashion shows were all the rage. Everybody was making digital fashion shows. And then as well, some things that people don't really think about is groom artist. So grooming hair for games. So basically making hairstyles for games, making hairstyles for films. That is an incredibly sought after discipline because not that many people know about it, and even less people actually do it. So there's a lot of niche in there that you can get your hands on. So it's got all the different flavors for all the different folks. Okay, and then our class path. So we start with 3D modeling fundamentals. We start you at the very bottom, no plugins, no frills, just get it in there, right? Like show you how to build form with 3D models. And then we take that, and when we move, and we take those principles and we move it into character and environment modeling. So we do what's called a beautiful corner. We do a very simple character and a nice little sci-fi corner that or fantasy corner to just show you how the whole pipeline would work in both environments and characters. So they use all the same tools, but the sensibilities are a little bit different between the two of them. And then we move on to creature and hard surface modeling. That's when we get into a little bit more sculptural modeling, a little bit higher detail, advanced character modeling. That's where you see like these blacksmith characters coming from. So a humanoid character or a creature type character, and then advanced environment modeling and layouts where you get to make a really, really big environment that looks really special and can really, really wow a potential employer. And then the 3D modeling capstone is basically to make something cool. And then you're done. And then you keep learning forever.
Awesome, Brian. What I really loved about your discussion when you were talking about the different software programs that we're in, and you had your finger on the pulse as to where things were moving and where industry was using. I think that's something that's a little bit unique about having someone like yourself that is still and has been so experienced in the industry, being on top of movements, because software does move quite quickly, doesn't it?
It does, and and that's why I personally purport that you should learn that my students learn theory and not buttons. So learn about how digital color works, learn about how polygons work, learn about how UVs actually work underneath the hood, because software changes. There was one of the top softwares in the world, Softimage, just disappeared like 8 years ago. It was like it just doesn't exist anymore. I would say most of the software I teach now and I use on a daily basis didn't exist when I was in school, and they'll probably fall by the wayside and something new will probably come up. But theory never changes, math does not change, design principles don't change. Even Brandon was talking about like Procreate is coming up and kind of like challenging Photoshop a little bit. If you give, I'm pretty sure if I gave Brandon a crayon, he could make an amazing image, right? It's not about the tool, it's about the person using it.
Awesome. So that's our 3D modeling specialization. So if you've got some questions around there, Brian is your guy. We're going to cross across to Daniel. Daniel is our head of department for our FX specialization. Daniel, tell us why you're also awesome.
Thanks, Baden. Hello, everybody. Nice to see so many people attending. My name's Daniel. I'm the head of the FX department, which is essentially the Houdini department. I have been a senior effects artist for a number of years now, most recently working at Method, which is now Framestore in Melbourne. And I've been working in the industry for about 17 years, primarily using Houdini. And for compositing, I also use Nuke, and you can see some of the films that I've worked on there. So what is effects? Effects, in my opinion, is one of the most exciting parts of working in film and visual effects because it's explosions, it's simulations, it's kind of anything that you might see in an action movie or like Avengers or Thor or anything like that, where there's fire and smoke and lightning and sparks. It's all that cool kind of dynamic stuff that is not animated characters or, modeled vehicles. We might work with animation, so we might get a character and we might need to simulate slime or blood or, stuff like that. So it's really working with the other departments and taking those assets created by those other departments and bringing them to life and adding these kind of dynamic effects. So it works a lot with sort of knowledge of physics and motion. You don't have to be an expert in physics to be able to be a competent effects artist, but it certainly helps to understand how things work. And it's a lot about sort of observing how things work in the real world. So looking at a lot of reference and then trying to recreate it digitally. Kind of similar to what Brian was saying about modeling. It's sort of, it's a creative problem solving discipline. So you never know what you're going to be tasked with as an effects artist. Each job will be different and each task will be different. So it's about trying to come up with a solution to realize this really complex sort of system on screen and to make it look like a visually stunning piece. It's people often think of effects as being really technical, but it is also very creative. We have to still make pretty pictures at the end of the day, so it does help to have some sort of visual skills. I think it's a great thing for people to learn how to draw, even if you're not particularly good at it. It's good to have that skill because it helps to develop your eye. So the skills and knowledge required to be an effects artist, some basic 3D modeling helps. I mean, even advanced 3D modeling helps. The more you know in this industry, the better you will be. So at the very minimum, you would require a little bit of 3D modeling just to help you maybe model some rocks that you might be blowing up or throwing out some lightning that you need to model up quickly. You also need to know how to light, that is, to bring the image to life on screen. Without lights, everything looks flat and dull. So you need to be able to light it just like you would at a photography shoot or something. So you need to know how to do that in the computer, and you need to know how to output it using rendering, which is something that we teach in the course, of course. As with every one of these disciplines, you need to know how to, organize yourself, be able to plan, have good time management. And these are things that come, with time, and we try to teach you some of that. And we also teach you our experiences as, mentors working in the industry. The tools of the trade, like Brian said, it's changing all the time. When I started, I was using 3D Studio Max for the longest time, for about 10 or 12 years. And then all of a sudden this new software started coming on the scene, and people were saying, oh, you should try Houdini. And it took me a long time. It took a lot of us a long time to switch over. Begrudgingly didn't want to leave those past 12 years behind. But really, after getting into it and learning Houdini, I realized, man, this is like, I'm in heaven now. I had all these problems, all these brick walls that I would hit with other softwares, and then coming to Houdini, you can kind of do whatever you want as long as you know how to use it. So it was like the doors opened, and a new world of visual effects sort of, came into being. And I I hear that a lot from VFX artists that have been working in the industry a long time, is that, Houdini is just so much more fun to use. It's complex, but yeah, it's a real joy to work in. We also use Nuke, so we need to composite our images together once we've produced them. Maya is still used a little bit in the industry. We don't teach that in the effects course, but it is still used a little bit, different studios. And then a little bit of programming knowledge. So we teach one of the languages, which is Vex, and that's the sort of Houdini language. You don't need to be like a complete programmer to do it, but a little bit of knowledge just helps you to do more and more complex things. So these are some examples of some work. The top video there is a recent project I did with Kitbash, the 3D modeling company, showing how you could do VFX with, their models. And then some work that I've done in the past for the school on the right. The sort of explosion became a project for our compositing course. And then there's a still from Game of Thrones that I worked on the left. On the right, this project by one of my students, Ivan, demonstrates what a capstone project might look like. So this was the final project that we worked on together. I helped him sort of, mentored him about what he might need to do, what sort of effects might be needed, and then how to technically achieve them. And what was interesting about this was that we worked with an animation student in the course to provide the animation of those tentacles that we could then apply our effects to. So what sort of career could you hope for in effects? And same as what Brian said, there are so many careers that you could do in with Houdini knowledge, not just effects specifically. But these are some of the main ones that if you want to specialize in effects. So an effects artist, that's going to be your day-to-day producing explosions, fire, smoke, sparks, electricity, all that kind of stuff. Working in either film, television, commercials, or games. Film and games, the requirements are different, but the sort of type of effects that you'd be doing are very similar. And then you can work as a character effects artist. So that would be working on things specific to characters. So simulating cloth, hair and fur, feathers, setting up muscle simulations and skin, that sort of thing. Then there's technical roles. So effects technical artist is more similar to an artist role, where you still might be required to create those effects, but you also might be required to build tools and work at a more pipeline level, where you're assisting maybe other departments getting the assets to the effects department, and then maybe working out how to export those effects to a lighting department. So effects artists, technical artists are more about building tools and assisting the other effects artists with technical challenges. And there you can sort of work your way up into lead and supervisory roles where you might be overseeing a team and assisting at a higher level where you're less on tools and more looking at organization and planning and working out what's needed and then relaying that to your team. But beyond that, Houdini is such a useful tool in all sorts of 3D industries that you could really take those skills into any sort of job where 3D is being used. It is such a powerful software that it really can be used for anything, medical imaging, 3D modeling, you name it. So let's take a look at the course structure. We start off effects with effects foundations, and that is really just setting the stage for the rest of the course. It's teaching those foundational skills that are needed to get you the understanding of how Houdini works before we move on to learning some of the more complex and maybe some of the more fun projects. But we do try to keep everything, exciting all the way through, showing you a bit of explosions and a bit of fluid simulations and destruction from the very start. In the second term, we work through into destruction mainly, and we focus on that. We really, take a deep dive into all the complexity of destruction. Destruction is one of those effects that is in every film, whether it's a door being blown off its hinges or a complete building destruction, an explosion. And then that leads on to pyro, which is our fire simulations. That's what's called in Houdini. So fire and smoke and dust and anything that has that kind of volumetric look, we also take a long look at that. Then we move on to liquid, which is, water, chocolate pouring, all that kind of stuff. And finally, vellum, which is our cloth simulations, which can be very varied in what they are, but that's sort of a good skill for learning if you want to be a creature effects artist. Then we look at our production techniques. So we start looking at larger projects and how effects might be used in conjunction with footage, looking at how we can get those two things to blend seamlessly together. And then our final capstone is working on your portfolio, trying to get you ready for the industry and developing projects like the one I showed earlier with the tentacles. And that's the end of our bachelor degrees. So by the end, you should have a very strong knowledge of Houdini and effects.
What I loved about your discussion, Daniel, is you were talking about how the skills and capabilities that you learn in the context of film are also applicable in multiple different areas. And a stat that I heard recently was Unreal Engine as a software stack has seen a 250% increase in the automotive industry in the last 12 months.
Right.
So it's being the capabilities that you're learning in the context of film and games are not just limited to the film and game industry. You can see this translation into other industries where those skills and capabilities are becoming more and more in demand.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, that's why it's important that we teach you, as Brian said, we teach you, how to use these skills, and they can be software agnostic. It's something that you could transfer to other softwares or other industries. While we focus on Houdini, you could easily apply those to Unreal or other, other softwares or industries.
Outstanding. So that's our FX specialization. Thank you, Daniel. Great explanation. We're going to call you across to Scott, the first of our two Scotts. He's the manager of our animation specialization. Scott, tell us why you're awesome.
Well, I think I'm awesome because everybody told me I couldn't be an animator, and I did it anyway. And I see this all the time now. One of the number one questions I get from students is, well, if I do 2D animation, am I going to be able to get a job? And I'm telling you, when I did 2D animation, there was no industry, there was no job, and I did it anyway. And I think that's what you need to become an animator. I think you need to be someone who says, this is what I was put here to do, and I'm just going to do it. And the jobs will come and they'll go, but I'm going to be an animator. It's a whole life philosophy. And that's what I was. I got into animation, even though everyone said I couldn't do it. I got into it and worked at Disney on Pocahontas and see it on the screen, Hunchback, Hercules. And then I went to DreamWorks. I worked on all their 2D films like El Dorado. That one seems to be popular still. And then when CG animation started rumbling in, I began to realize that, hey, this is a thing and I want to know about it because I love animation. And it isn't even just, oh, I love to draw or I love to do stop motion, anything. It's like, no, I love animation. I love breathing life into characters. So I jumped onto the character animation 3D train. And then after that, I thought, you know, I really liked Star Wars and I really liked all those monster movies that I saw when I was a kid. I want to do that too. And so then I went into creature effects and did things like Life of Pi and Golden Compass and Cabin in the Woods. I'd always wanted to do scary movies, and I got to do one. And so, again, an animator. That's what I wanted to be, and that's what I am. And I think I see that in the students that I look at. They want to be animators, and they don't care if there's a business or not. Although it's great, and there is a business, there's plenty to do. Animation is everywhere these days, but you do it because you love it. You love what you do, and you do what you love, and that's the best job in the world. So 3D animation, I mean, the bottom line is we are making characters come alive. We're doing it one frame at a time. And in 3D animation, it's akin to doing stop motion. It's taking a puppet and moving it around inside of a screen with your keyboard and with your mouse. And next thing you know, you've brought something to life. We obviously brought a tiger to life and won some awards and things for Life of Pi, and then lots of character stuff, but it is making things come alive. And it really is exciting and fun that there's an element of play to it, even though it's very disciplined and you have to be very excited about that part of it too, is you want things to look right, but it's a playtime. It attracts a lot of people who like childish things. So yes, so aside from just character animation, we can also do creature stuff. We can, you know, people are worried about AI. It's like, it's just another tool. It's about using your brain to make something that is not alive come to life, and how to make that look pleasing to an audience. And that's what 3D animation basically is. For skills, I mean, we take you from the ground floor up. We say, okay, turn on the computer and look at the software. And those are the skills you need. As much as anything, you just need to love observing life and making things move and wanting to create, and coming in here to a school like this prepared to learn and explore and have some fun and work hard too. So that's what you need. But beyond that, observation, just the same as you would with an arts class, you need to know what anatomy is and be excited about it and learning. And you need to love looking at the world and seeing what's out there and trying to replicate it in your art. And so those are the skills and knowledge. The tools of the trade, everybody said this already, I'll just reiterate it. We're teaching you animation. We're teaching you things like the 12 principles and how things move and how to make things look realistic. That's not software based. We use Maya because it's still an industry standard. Even Blender, I've messed with all these, you know, the tools of the trade. They're not that different. They really come down to the same basic set of things, timelines and layers and building things that you can go frame by frame and move. And so I don't worry too much about that. But yes, we are embracing new technology. That's one of the reasons I think I lasted as long as I did in the animation industry, was I was not afraid to evolve as things evolved. And I was an animator. That was what I did, and that's what I still do, even as a department head. Here's some clips. We have some sound for a student clip, if we do have sound. If we don't, that's okay too. But just some things that we worked on. The one in the upper left is a student film. The one in the lower left, a little bit of trivia, did not make it into the Golden Compass, but was used for all the advertising material. It's one of my favorite shots, and I'm very proud of it. And then the one in the upper right, Night at the Museum 2, this shows you the variety of things that are possible. Again, there are jobs. You don't even know half the things out there that are animation, and there's so many different ways you can get in, and not just, ooh, the glory job of I'm going to do the Trolls. You know, I'm going to do the close-up of all the best scenes in the new Trolls film or something, or Spider-Verse. There are lots of different things that you can do if you love it. And so this collage kind of represents that. And then the one on the lower right kind of ties in with what Daniel was saying. There was room for somebody not only who knows animation enough to do the octopus arms, but people who know how boats should move on the water, how water should move. It's all motion graphics, and no computer ever will be able to originate that or steal it and do it properly. It takes an artist's eye and sensitivity to be able to replicate that stuff and make it as beautiful as it is. That's my belief, and I'm sticking to it.
Also, fun fact that I worked on that shot as well. The golden monkey, the monkey, I simulated the hair on that shot.
We'll talk, Brian. You and I'll talk later. We'll share stories. So then briefly, even 2D animation's an extension of 3D, that they start out similar. And you're talking about the 12 principles. You're talking about how things move, observing the world. The difference is you're drawing. 2D is an art form. And so we attract a lot of people who are artists. We are a safe haven for introverts and people like myself. Like I used to, not anymore, but I used to be very introverted, and all I wanted to do was sit in my safe space and draw and create things one frame at a time. But so you're welcome to come and join us. You'll find a home with us. But you do have to love to draw. And so that is the main thing. The skills and knowledge that are required is you just have to love to draw. I have people who aren't very good at drawing come through our courses and they have a great time. And that doesn't mean they're not good animators. It's just a matter of whether you love it or not enough to keep doing it, and that will make you get better at it. So again, observation, but specifically with 2D animation, you have to love to draw. That's the foundation of what it is we do. However, we also do cut out rigged animation, which is popular with 2D television shows. But I'll talk about that in a second with Job Outlook. So the tools of the trade, we use Toon Boom. I think it's the most diverse program that is available. It has everything that we used to do back in the old covered wagon days of paper, when we used to animate with paper and pencils. It has all the tools that replicate that, plus all the new fun, exciting stuff, more things that you could ever imagine using in your lifetime. I get a lot of pushback. It's like, well, why don't you use this one? Why don't you use this one? Well, it's because Toon Boom has everything. Once you've learned Toon Boom, the others are going to be much easier, and we're going to guide you through Toon Boom. So that's actually a benefit, I think. Learn the tough one first. Same with Maya in 3D. Learn the tough one first. The rest are going to get easier. So, but yeah, all of these are great programs. And some examples, obviously I worked on Pocahontas. The one on the upper right's mine. I just did that to demonstrate how you can make things look 3D in Toon Boom. The one playing in the lower right is student work. It's excellent Disney style animation. Sorry, I'm just buzzing through them. And then the one in the lower left is also student work. Yeah, so the one just played, that was mine. And then the one in the lower left is more student stuff. But as you can see, there's a big variety of what constitutes 2D animation. What is 2D animation? It can be anything you want it to be. And so that's why we attract artists and introverts and people who really want to create and want to make their art move and breathe and come to life. All right, so what are the careers? Well, in 3D animation, obviously, there's no limit to what the jobs are in 3D animation. Every day I hear about more and more things that are being used for animation. Think about the last time you saw a car commercial. You were watching a car that was probably CG animated and placed into the scene. It was not a real car. And that's not character stuff, but it is animation. That's a job. Somebody has to do that. Medical imaging has to be done by an animator. And so there are lots and lots of things besides just working on the latest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, but that's an option too. And there are character jobs, there are creature jobs that I did both, realistic creature stuff, cutesy cartoon animation stuff. There are games galore. There are going to be more and more games, lots more crossover. As AI is taking hold, there are going to be people who have to kind of integrate that with existing animation and fusing all the different worlds that have come previously into one new evolved world that's coming right before our very eyes. And then in 2D animation, as I was saying before, you can draw every single frame, and that happens mostly in feature films, which are still being made, but probably most likely in television animation and commercials and explainer videos. Then we also have 2D cutout animation, which is closer to 3D animation in that you've got a rig that is built that looks like a 2D character, but you move it like a puppet in your scene. So if you don't want to draw every single frame, and this happens a lot in 2D animation, then there's a specialty for you as well. So that's 2D cutout animation. Effects animation, where you're drawing fire and smoke and water, but you're drawing it. So the same things that Daniel's doing, except in a more 2D flat stylized kind of way that's more cartoon based. Obviously storyboards and layout and riggers, those are different disciplines that you can also get into. And then we start you right from the ground floor. 3D animation, foundations, 12 principles, how to make a bouncing ball, the very basics. So don't be afraid. You don't need to know much to be able to join us. Then we move into body mechanics, and you could easily stop there, but you won't because you want to learn it all. Storytelling for animation. Now we're talking about acting, and then advanced character acting. Now we're talking about emotions and complex acting that replicates the real world. Creatures, learning how to make things look like realistic animals, and then your capstone, which is a fusion of everything you've done before presented in a story that you can then hand to someone that tells your potential employers who you are as an artist. And then it's similar with 2D. The only difference again is that you're drawing, and we get you into acting a lot sooner and spend a lot more time acting in animation because that's really tough. It's tough in the sense that it requires discipline, your love of doing it, and you need time to do it, to draw everything frame by frame. So we spend a lot of time on that. And eventually we get you into cutout, and you take everything that you've known, that you've learned up until that point, and you synthesize it into your final project. Again, the story of who you are as an artist that you can hand to an employer and say, here you go, this is what I can do. And they will hire you, and you will have the best job in the entire world, I promise.
Scott, that's awesome. A few things from me. First, a bit of a fanboy moment. I think you've worked on pretty much all of my kids' favorite films. So
Great.
uh,
We'll talk.
so
Send them my way, and we'll have a little chat.
yeah, cool. I also love the fact how you talked about AI and AI's influence on the industry, and I have a very similar view because AI is just another tool, right? It's another
Right.
tool that enables people to do things in a slightly different way. Just like we used to do maths by hand, and then the calculators came along, didn't mean that you didn't learn how to do maths, right? And that the human aspect of knowing how to approach a problem still remained, despite the fact that calculators exist. I think the same is going to happen with AI. And it'll just
Absolutely
make
agree.
us it'll just make us far more powerful as humans, right? And embrace that technology. The last thing I wanted to say is you were talking about how animation is going through a bit of a renaissance and now it's kind of expanding. And I just got some industry stats, and in the next 7 years, the animation industry globally is going to go from 400 billion to close to 600 billion in net stuff. It's going through a real growth phase, and you talked about why that is, because animation is becoming more and more relevant in more and more industries, right? It's not just the film and game space. The animation capability can go across multiple different areas. I love that discussion. Thanks so much, Scott.
My pleasure.
Let's go off to our second Scott. This is Scott Bayless. Scott is in the game development space. He's the director of our game development specialization. Over to you, Scott. Why are you so awesome?
Well, Scott C is a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. So as you can see, I've been making games for a very long time. I started as an engineer and then moved into design and creative, eventually became a producer, and then moved into more and more responsible roles as an executive at some of the majors, including Microsoft, Electronic Arts, Midway, and Capcom. Now at CG Spectrum, I get to kind of go back to my roots and get involved in the things that drew me into the game development world in the first place. And so, yeah, that's who I am. I love what I do, and I love that we can help people find their way into game development on a couple of different paths that we're going to talk about today. So what is game development? Well, it's a really big phrase that covers a lot of ground. It covers design of games, it covers programming. It also covers disciplines that we've already heard about, art and animation, and also sound. The intersection of those things is quite often connected to design and programming in a lot of interesting ways. And the thing I find so kind of exciting about game development is that even design and programming as independent disciplines have a lot of interaction between the two. So it actually is one of the more collaborative areas in the world of of game development. The skills and knowledge required are kind of what you'd expect. In the world of programming, problem-solving skills are really important. Being able to understand a challenge and dissect it into something that you can kind of pick apart and make sense out of is a really valuable skill. It's also valuable in game design. Game designers are quite often problem solvers, and there's often a lot of iteration between designers and programmers as a game comes together. Designers need to be able to write. One of the most important skills that a designer can have is the ability to communicate to other people. Because at the end of the day, designers don't build very much, but they have a big influence on things that other people build. And while that may often focus on functionality connected to what programmers do, it also often influences what concept artists do, what animators do, what sound people do. All of those things are in some way affected by what designers put together. So again, it's a highly collaborative discipline. Math is important. It's not, that sounds scary. It's really not, but there are basic fundamental elements of math that are really valuable to have. You need to understand how 3D coordinate spaces work. You need to understand how angles work and how trigonometry works at a sort of fundamental level. You don't need a lot of calculus. You don't need a lot of extravagant math, but knowing the basics is really valuable. And then of course, the tools of the trade are exactly what you would expect. We use documents a lot to communicate with other people. We use Photoshop and GIMP, which is a sort of free version of Photoshop, to show people what we're talking about. We also use Illustrator. I actually use Inkscape quite a bit myself, because way back in the day when I was poor and didn't have a lot of money to spend on Illustrator, I just used Inkscape and I got used to it. We also sometimes get involved working with 3D tools like Maya and Blender. And these days, quite often designers do a lot of work inside game engines like Unreal and Unity. We at CG Spectrum focus mostly on Unreal. That's because it's one of the most dominant engines in the marketplace, and we think it offers a lot of flexibility to our students. And then of course there are sources of assets that designers can put to use, and those are available on the Unreal Marketplace. They're also available on the Unity Asset Store, and then actually Epic is launching a new service called Fab, which is the sort of upgunned version of the Unreal Marketplace. So that's it for the overview of game development. And this is an early prototype from one of my former students who has actually spun up his own studio in Barcelona, and is at the moment in negotiations with a couple of publishers for funding for his first commercial title. You can see it's a pretty big, ambitious title. It's actually a multiplayer title, and some of the tech under the hood that these guys have developed is actually quite impressive. They have their own online systems that they built from scratch. Okay, so game development careers in the domain of design, there are kind of three big areas that command a lot of attention right now in the game biz. Level designers are still in very high demand. Now, that the actual work that a level designer does will vary a lot from project to project. It could actually be designing of a discrete level that gets loaded up at some point in the game, or it could be designing elements of an open world. Both are valid, and there's a lot of demand for people who can do that. And the people who have both a designer skills and a good eye are especially in demand, because studios and development teams need those people. Systems designers get much more focused on how the game works and how the logic of the game interacts with the player. There are fewer positions available for systems designers, but people with those skills are actually in very high demand. And the narrative designer has become a more important component of game design, I think, over the last few years as games have gotten more sophisticated in their storytelling. The ability to craft those stories in a way that works well with the game is becoming a really valuable set of skills. On the programming side, there are a lot of programmers who build gameplay and work with designers to make that happen. And not surprisingly, AI is becoming a more important component of what game programmers do. And there's also a discipline that is a little bit coder and a little bit designer and a little bit artist called a technical artist, which is probably the most sought after position in the technical part of a game development team, especially large teams, because they have this huge impact on the success of a bunch of other disciplines and on the performance of the game. So people who are really good at that are very sought after, and there are not that many of them around. It's a demanding discipline. And I think a lot of people that go into game programming think that technical art is kind of not sexy. It's actually amazing because you get to do everything. Specializations. Okay, so for game design, we take you through the foundational elements of game design. We teach you about what a game is and how to analyze the work you're doing to identify the touch points for fun. There's a lot of theory that comes into that, and much more than people expect. I think a lot of people come into game design thinking, well, I'll just kind of think about cool stuff. I'll come up with a great idea and automatically it'll turn into a game. That's not how it works at all. It's actually a very precise discipline, and we teach you how to do it. We take you through the theory, and then in designing and implementing game systems, we actually take you through the process of putting that theory into practice and building something that's actually fun to play. And those skills actually have significant value. And in fact, I've had students who have exited at that level and found themselves in design positions that were really rewarding for them. But you can go a lot further. And what we do in the diploma level is take you through more specialized skill sets for different major categories of game, and teach you in great detail how to design those kinds of games and design the player experience that comes along with them. And of course, that involves level design. Not surprisingly, we do emphasize level design quite a bit because it teaches you a lot of things about design in general and about gameplay, but it also gives you skills that can be applied across disciplines that go outside of games. As a lot of the other folks here today have talked about, there is demand for people who can do that kind of work in film and television and in visualization for other products. So it's a broad set of skills that has a lot of impact in a lot of different places. On the programming side, it's a similar pattern. We actually, if you don't know anything about programming, you can't even spell C++, that's fine. That's what the Programming Foundations course is for. We will teach you how to become a competent C++ programmer, and then we'll take you into working with Unreal Engine and teach you how to use it effectively to build gameplay. And we actually take you through the process of building a multiplayer game. So it's not a trivial process. You learn a ton about how Unreal Engine and C++ work together to create actual gameplay. And then in the diploma level, we take that way further. We go a lot deeper. We go into AI techniques that are literally cutting edge. And it's not just the techniques of getting an NPC to move around in a scene. It actually goes quite a bit deeper than that. Networking and replication. I actually looked at Steam the other day and noticed that the top 10 earners on Steam, 9 of them were multiplayer games. That's for a reason. As a friend of mine who is actually one of the best designers I've ever met said to me once, the most interesting thing people find in games is other people. And he's got a point. So we actually do quite a bit of put quite a bit of effort into teaching our programming specialists how networking works and all of the underpinnings that are required to create a multiplayer game. And then, of course, we go deeper into AI, animation, game mechanics, and finally, the capstone project that every one of our disciplines relies on. Because at the end of the day, when somebody's looking at you to decide whether they want to bring you into a team, what's going to influence their behavior more than anything else is your portfolio.
Outstanding, Scott. Really exciting space. I think the game development industry has had a bit of a blip in 2023. There's been a few layoffs around the world, but generally speaking, there's strong economic trade winds behind the game development industry. I think still predicted to grow at about 10% compound annual growth rate ongoing. So yeah, there's been a bit of a blip this year. But I noticed that with our own non-accredited courses, the short courses that we run, we typically run at about, from the game development space, about 7 out of 10 of our graduates gain a job placement straight out of the course. And we haven't seen a downtick in that in 2023. So our juniors are still being hired at about the same rate, despite the fact we've had that bit of a downfall.
Yeah, actually, just to riff on that a little bit, Ben, one of the things that I'm hearing from my contacts in the smaller studios is that they still have work that needs to be done. There's still demand among those studios for talent. Some of the big studios have had to kind of course correct. I think that has a lot to do with industry trends and less to do with the healthiness of the business. I think a lot of studios made commitments to game forms that they weren't prepared to deliver in a successful way. But that kind of shakeout is actually good for the industry, and it's actually benefiting a lot of the smaller studios. So it's a thriving space.
Yeah. I was just reading a Forbes article. It was talking about that exact point, how there's been this shakeout in the larger side of the space, but moving forward, it'll be the smaller boutique things that go after quality and driving that. And we see that in our things. So you've just heard from Scott Bayless about our game programming and game development, game design degrees. Before Scott, you heard from Scott Claus, and he was talking about 2D animation and 3D animation. Prior to Scott, we had Daniel. Daniel was talking about FX and explosions and smoke and related fun stuff. Before Daniel, we had Brian. Brian was talking about 3D modeling. I loved that Rango show, so it was really cool to see that in space and see how it kind of plays out. And all the way back to the beginning, where we had Brandon Reimken, our head of department for concept art, talking about the concept art space. I've been noticing a lot of questions coming through the Q&A space. So far, we've got 39 of them answered. So great to see those Q&As coming through, and our team is on there for you. So if you've got a question, make sure you're chucking into that question and answer space. The next section of our open day is our industry roundtable, and I'm really super pumped for our industry roundtable discussion. We've got 3 awesome people here to talk to you. We call them the 3 J's. We've got Jamie and Jess and Jeff. But they're coming from some of our industry partners. So Luma Pictures. Luma is a boutique creative studio, but they're more of an FX studio and a visual effects studio. And I had a little tagline from Luma as I was going to think. They bring magic to acclaimed movies and more. That's their little tagline as a studio. So we're going to hear from Jamie. I'll get a bit of an intro to Jamie in a minute. Then we've got Jess from Princess Bento. Princess Bento is a collaboration between Princess Pictures and Bento Box Entertainment. Really awesome in the 2D animation space. And then Jeff is from Little Grim Entertainment. Jeff's an awesome story because he's a CG Spectrum graduate and he's gone out and started his own studio. Little Grim is in the video game and it's an animation studio as well. And their little tagline is to tell engaging stories with compelling characters through video games and animated shows. So that's kind of a bit of a view. You'll see we've got like a touch of FX, a touch of animation, and a touch of game design. A bit of an intro to you, and then I'll hand across to Jamie. But Jamie is the Vice President of culture. And you'll see that she's really focused on talent acquisition and management and growth. That's Jamie. She's based out of Melbourne. Jess is also based in Melbourne with Princess Bento. She's also talent focused. So I've got two people here that are really focused on the talent acquisition and management process within studios. And then we go across to Jeff. Jeff is the CEO and director, which means that he wears lots of hats. You probably do a bit of talent acquisition and management yourself, Jeff, but across all different aspects of Little Grim Entertainment. So he'll give you a bit of a broader view, but in the game development industry. So Jamie, I might start with you and kind of prompt you with a question that we had pre-proposed to us by one of the registrants. The question was, what are some of the key non-technical skills recruiters are looking for in a junior artist? Maybe you can kind of lead us off in our discussion in that regard.
Yeah, I'd love to. I think there's three things that we look for in junior artists when we're hiring for Luma. First one is ambition. I think it's really important that people are sort of ambitious about their craft, ambitious about learning, about joining a team. So that's one. Second one is team collaboration. We love people who are, high on their list is like to be able to kind of work with other teammates, learn from them, support and collaborate with them. That's really important. And then the third one, I know this might sound a little funny, but we really like nice people. You have to work with these people day in and day out, 8 hours a day, all year long, and you work on some really incredibly stressful projects, big projects. So to have really nice people that are fun to work with, are positive, or bring good energy to the teams, I think is really, really important for us. We place our culture internally very, very highly, and we kind of have an internal policy. It doesn't matter how skilled you are, if you're not a nice person, we don't really bring you on. So they're probably the three key things that we look for at Luma.
Awesome, Jamie. Jess, do you have a similar sort of view at Princess Bento?
Yeah, I think Jamie's nailed it. We have a more casual no dickheads policy, basically. But yeah, very similar. It's, you want people to feel safe and happy when they come to work. Communication is a really huge thing since a lot of people have moved remote. And we understand that not everybody is the most outgoing person in the studio, but we want to make everybody feel comfortable. And I think communication is a big part of things. But yeah, it's ambition. It's like a passion for what you're doing. I see that in all of our animators. They really love coming to work, and they really love spending time with other people who share that passion. And yeah, I think when you find your job in the industry, you really find your people. And it's really lovely to watch that from my perspective.
I'm connecting with that communication bit you brought out, because you'll hear from it for the participants in a little while when we talk about our core pass. But one of the subjects that is embedded in across all of our degrees is effective communication. So we actually through your learning experience, you learn the fundamentals of effective communication that can hopefully hold you in good stead moving forward. Jeff, how about you in the game design and development space? What are you looking for in a young grad coming out into work?
Yeah, I mean, also to kind of echo what has been said already, obviously, ambition and drive is a lot of it, but we want to see people that are obviously talented, right? That's why we're interviewing you. That's why we're getting the job. That's why you will get the job, is because we see talent in you. But we also want people that want to grow, and especially as a junior, humble enough to know that there is still space for you to learn and grow. Understand that, yeah, you may be done with schooling, but there's still much more for you to learn. And, a lot of your journey, a lot of what you will learn will be on the job, too. And it's not to say that schooling isn't important. It's obviously an important tool to get you there, but, there's too much to learn in the term of a school year, or however long the program is. So just be open to ideas and learning and growing and listening to your mentors, your bosses, the people you work for, and compassion and kindness, like they were saying before, is very key. You know, I'm sure everybody's heard this before. It's a smaller industry than you think. You know, so you're only doing yourself a service to just be kind to the others. Even if you leave a job or think you're going to leave a job and that you'll never see those people ever again, you'll be surprised that you'll go interview for some other company and they'll hear about you. You know, if they had a bad experience, oh, Jeff was kind of a jerk. You know, like it's so just, you know, remember that. Just be kind and humble.
Jess, you guys specialize in 2D animation, right? And if you're keen for the participants, you can check these people out. You can go to princessbento.com and have a bit of a look at what they're all about, and their web presence is really representative of the type of work that they do. Lumapictures.com, littlegrimentertainment.com. So you can see all these organizations if you're interested to check out their web sort of presence. But when young people come to you, Jess, often they present like a portfolio of work. It's one of the ways in which the onboarding process works. Can you talk about how young people or how people that are getting into sort of roles to enter into studios, what some good advice is for portfolio construction and what you look for in a good portfolio?
Yeah, I think if you're kind of sending a general introduction, I'm happy to see a little bit of everything. But if you're applying, we have placements, traineeships, and things that are for specific departments. And if you're applying for a background placement or a VFX placement, which is, you know, just our 2D effects, then that's what we really want to see. But we're really happy to see everything, you know, because we have character design, character layout, hand-drawn animation. You know, if you're applying for anything like that, we would love to see your life drawing. We would love to see your sketches. A focus on hands is something that I think one of the recruiters at Flying Bark talks about all the time. I'm not going to claim that as my own, but really, really focus on hands. There's a reason that AI struggles to make hands. They're hard. And they're really important to animation. And I think as well, just really, yeah, kind of if you are really honing in on a specific thing that you're trying to do, be it storyboarding or, you know, animation, just focus on learning as much as you can in, you know, at school, but, you know, collaborating with other people that you're kind of studying with, etc., trying to just kind of create as much content as you can while you can. I guess that's it's really great to see what people can kind of do when you have that kind of time, because when you get into the industry, it's really, really hard to make the time and take the time to keep working on things. So while you have the luxury of studying or the luxury of time, it's great to try and you know, get as much as you can done. But yeah, I guess it's like always like, you know, backgrounds, it's a focus on understanding perspective, and, you know, props and characters, it's similarly perspective, anatomy, all that kind of stuff. Those skills are kind of the base level, and then it's like the creativity around that. Yeah.
Jamie, I wanted to ask, career progression likewise, for a junior coming in, what does career progression look like within a studio? Does it occur within studio or across studios? How does that typically look for an early entrant into this industry?
Yeah, I think Luma Pictures is pretty lucky because we have 3 global studios. So we have one in Melbourne, one in LA, and one in Vancouver. And while we allow people to work from home, it does mean that you get to kind of have the opportunity to move across the world to be able to work internally within our company. And one of the big key things about Luma is that we, every year, as part of our business development plan, we actually strategize and forward commit a percentage of positions that are allocated to juniors. So that's always in our business model mix, that we take on juniors every year. And the reason for that is because internally we have a very aggressive growth path. So that means the juniors that we take on this year would have progressed to a high junior next year, and then into a mid, and to then senior. So every year we're sort of pushing our artists to be able to kind of forge their pathway into the senior levels, which means that there's always opportunities for, you know, kind of leveling up every year. It also is dependent on the projects that we take on. So, you know, you may one year come in and do I Am Groot season 2, and that's amazing as an animator. And then next year you're on sort of Spider-Man, you know, series number 4, and that means like you get challenged in the work in that way. So really depending on the work and what we have in house, it will push the artists to kind of, you know, grow their skills. And we're really big believers in promoting internally. So once you're in our model and once you're part of our company, you know, we really want to push that. And so if we can kind of promote you to being a mid-level artist by year 2 or year 3, we'll certainly take that on board rather than hiring externally. So I think that's really important to know. And I think that, you know, it's also a combination of all the other things. You get to learn our pipeline, you get to learn, you know, our supervisors and how we operate. So I think if you're in the mix, then it's going to be a really sort of positive pathway into leveling up every year.
Yeah, outstanding. Jeff Duron, I'm keen to kind of know like a day in the life of what does a work environment look like for someone who's coming into working at Little Grim Entertainment?
So, you know, it obviously varies quite drastically on your specialty, but it is a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of, you know, you'll have early, you know, a lot of places call them stand-ups or morning meetings and things where you kind of discuss the day-to-day work. And then you have your production team that's really planning out sort of the big picture idea, but then breaking it down into smaller achievable chunks, which are often called sprints. And so within your sprint, you have certain goals that you're all trying to meet in usually like a 2-week period with your team. And so that's kind of what it is. It's taking every day, you know, one step at a time. And of course, there's always things that come up that are unexpected, but you try to mitigate that as much as possible by obviously a lot of communication. Producers, it's kind of their job to make sure everything's staying on track and you know, you as an artist or a programmer, your responsibility is obviously to do the tasks you have at hand, which is often managed through some sort of task management system, and sort of get your day-to-day things done. But also, and probably one of the most difficult things to do, which seniors and leaders, they'll help you with as you get to know your craft a little better, is giving some sort of estimates, right, of how long your work will take, because that's the core of what production uses to sort of anticipate how long something is going to be, how long it's going to take to get done and completed. So, but yeah, day-to-day job is just obviously doing the work that you were hired to do, but also communicating with the team and making sure everybody's staying on task and you're doing what you need to do and not holding up anybody else. Because another thing you'll find out about, you know, as Scott kind of mentioned, there's so many different aspects of game development and positions that a lot of them rely on each other, right? If one doesn't get done, the other can't really start. So it's really important that you you know, try to do your best to keep on task, and if you feel like it's falling behind, to sort of let your producer know or let your manager know, or just communicate again, just so that adjustments can be made or help can come in and assist you if need be.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm going to wrap up our industry roundtable with a one-sentence answer from each of you, and then also there's opportunity for the participants to ask particular questions either from Jess or Jamie or Jeff. You can chuck into that Q&A. But from each of you, maybe starting with Jess, moving to Jamie, and then on to Jeff, one piece of advice for someone who's looking to go into this space, looking to perhaps take a bit of education and then get into the industry, something that maybe you would have wanted to know when you started your journey?
Oh gosh, I mean, my background's kind of different. So one sentence, I would just say, really embrace the learning. I mean, and really, you know, get the most out of the classes that you can, get the most out of the peers who might be the people you work with in the future or who might hire you in the future. Really just make the most of that time, because it should be a really creatively fulfilling and amazing learning opportunity. And, you know, just really embrace it and push yourself to you know, to really make the most of it.
Outstanding. Jamie?
I'd say only put in your best work on your reel. And if you're going to put in less than great work, learn how to critique it and let the people know what you would change about it, and be a nice person, I think.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Jeff.
I would say your education is only as good as what you make of it. There's a lot of, especially with CG Spectrum, going through the school, I saw students that really succeeded and students that didn't, with the same curriculum, the same videos, the same teachers, the same mentors, and there are tools and resources available, which we'll get to eventually, to help you with that. But when you go to school, when you decide and make that choice to learn this craft, dedicate yourself to it and focus on it, because and take as many opportunities as you can, whether it's the school provides or outside of the school, to continue to learn and grow, because it'll only benefit you in the future.
Awesome advice. So there you go, participants. Straight from the horse's mouth, what's happening in industry, what it looks like for juniors going in, what career progressions might look like, what they look for, what a day in the life would be, and then a little bit of advice for you. Opportunities for targeted Q&A through that Q&A session. We're going to continue on with the exploration of what these degrees look like. You're going to hear a little bit from Sherilyn Lennon, our Dean Learning and Teaching, but also from the director of our core strands from the creative industries, Dr. Kathy Constantin. Kathy, I'm going to pop across to you, and you can lead us through a bit about yourself, and then we'll get on to the structure of what the core program looks like.
Yeah, thanks, Baden. So my name's Kathy. I am actually a career changer. So before I got into industry, I was in real estate in the accounts department. Boy, did I not like that. I did it for almost 3 years and it was so boring and it wasn't me. I'd always been a creative person. I grew up with Disney. I've been obsessed with Star Wars since I was about 3. And I just knew that I wanted to work in industry. And it's funny because a lot of people have already mentioned a lot of the things I want to say. So like Scott mentioned, when he was getting into animation, it was a lot of, you can't do that, or isn't it really hard to get a job in that industry? And I had the exact same thing when I wanted to leave real estate and get into a more of a creative space. But I went, you know what? This is what I want. This is life. This is what I want to do. I can't imagine anything else other than working in film. So I did it. I went back to uni. And I went to one of the bigger universities in Australia, but the education that I got from there was very limited. It was kind of really broad. It was a little bit about research, a little bit about web design. I did a bit of game, a bit of typography, and then I was fortunate to do some animation and 3D. But it wasn't enough. I felt like when I left the uni, I didn't feel like I had enough education. So I ended up self-teaching a lot of the skills that I wanted. It's that whole, like Jeff just said, you only get out what you put in. So I ended up doing extra. Then when I left uni, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I was not at all ready for industry. I didn't feel like I was hireable. So I went to a networking event and completely put myself out of my comfort zone and made sure I talked to every single industry person there. Say it was this kind of event. I went to Jamie, I went to Jess, I went to Jeff, and I said, "Hi, I'm Kathy," and I got their contact details. And from there, I ended up getting my job in industry. In recruitment. So going from, isn't it really hard to get a job in film? You're not going to make it. My first job out of uni after leaving industry was to hire for Game of Thrones, which was amazing because I ended up starting as a recruiter. And then I went on to Thor Ragnarok. Then I moved into production. And before I hand over to Sherilyn, start off the talk about the cause, one of the biggest things I realized when I was working in industry and in production is that everything I needed to know about industry, I learned in industry. No one taught me that stuff at uni. No one taught me those skills or that insight. And it was, the departments, the roles, the everyday structure and the workflow and things like the pipeline, which you've heard that word thrown around a bit today. I didn't learn that until I was in industry, which is why these core strands are really important, because it's like your industry insider into these core skills that you need. But before I jump into the rest, I'll hand over to Sherilyn to give her intro and give her academic rigor, and then I'll jump back into the strands.
Thanks. Thanks, Kathy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the CG Spectrum Institute Open Day. I am the Dean, as you heard from Baden, I'm the Dean Learning and Teaching at CG Spectrum Institute. So I'm the crusty old academic who lurks in the background, ensuring that there's the quality and rigor of the assessments and the content and the courses that you'll be doing are ensured. So that's my role. I've got a long career in education and academia. I won't tell you how long, but it's a fairly long one. So I've spent a lot of time designing, developing, writing, overseeing the writing of, and implementing courses to meet accreditation qualifications. So I'm passionate about making sure that the courses that you do, or the courses that I'm involved in co-developing, are going to be rigorous. They're going to meet the qualifications that are required. There's not going to be any nasty surprises there, but they're also, it's really important, I think, that they're engaging. I'm sure we've all had moments at school, or if you've studied earlier in other courses, where you're doing assessment tasks going, this is just a tick box exercise, why am I doing this? So that's something that we want to steer away for at CGSI. And because it's such a young, new, progressive institute, we've had the opportunity to design everything from scratch. And I can assure you that when you're doing an assessment piece, you know exactly why you're doing it and how relevant it is to the real world. So we try to make sure everything is connected and that you're not just doing tick box exercises when you're doing your assessment or your content, you're learning. So I can honestly say, hand on heart, that this is the first time I've ever had the privilege of working with industry folk and people who are at the cutting edge in the industry to co-design courses. Normally, I'm stuck in a room with a bunch of other academics, and we're or educators, and we're designing the courses. So it's been extraordinarily refreshing. And I think what we've got because of that approach is something that's really unique and really special. And I'm very excited to be a part of it all. So I'm confident that we have developed something that is pretty special here, whilst also ticking the boxes of all our accreditation and tertiary requirements. Now, as Kathy was mentioning earlier, you've heard about the majors that are on offer and the suite of majors that you can select from to actually explore. But what we're going to talk about in this section, and I'll hand over to Kathy very soon, are the core courses that sit alongside these majors. So the core courses are those that you would complete, or that you are required to complete. And they are the ones that you heard Baden talk to you earlier about. They're the ones that make you industry ready. You hit the ground running and you already understand the ins and outs of what's required by industry, alongside the technical and specialised skills that you will need to complete to be, relevant to industry as well. So we believe that this is what sets our courses aside from most graduate courses, and makes what we're offering highly competitive. So our degrees are very specialised, as you've just heard all our industry experts talking to you about the specialisations you can do, but they also prepare you to work in industry right from the get-go. So I might hand over to you at this point again, Dr. Kathy Constantin, who sits across being industry, having a hand in industry, but is also an academic. So she's a very rare dual hat wearer in our organisation. So over to you, Kathy, to talk about the core courses.
Thanks, Sherilyn. It's so funny. Most of the things I want to talk about, these core subjects, have just been said over and over again from everyone that's been presented, not just the industry experts, but Sherilyn, Baden, and all the industry experts, the discipline experts as well. But it does. These core subjects really do set us apart because we're not just a technical school. You do get that deep industry knowledge from your specializations that you pick, whether it's effects or concept or animation. But these core strands are designed to build things like your interpersonal skills, your soft skills, and even it's been coined as power skills. So, the leadership and management. But what makes the core subject stand out is that they've been meaningfully contextualized with industry. And I say that because, this is not just to get you ready for industry, but it's for industry as well. And that means preparing you as artists, but also remember well, I think I skipped over this part, that I was a recruiter in industry. And then we've got Jamie and Jess and even Jeff, who are involved in that talent acquisition as well. I mean, between us, we've seen thousands of job applications for all the different roles across VFX, animation, and games. And we see those pitfalls all the time. And it's not just from a recruiter's perspective, but even artists and producers and everyone that's working on these projects see the really steep learning curve that these juniors who happen to get into industry, the curves they have to take. And Jamie mentioned the upskilling in studio, and even Jeff mentioned, all this stuff that you have to learn in industry because you can't get that education from anywhere else, which is why these core subjects have been designed to fill those gaps. So a story happened to me when I was in industry. I started in recruitment and I was in that job for about 2 years. Then I moved to production. What happened when I got that job was it came up, I interviewed, I got it, and it was really exciting. And everyone's like, yay, welcome to production. Here's your desk, here's your computer, and that was it. Within a total of 5 minutes, I had someone tap me on my shoulder and say, hey, you're with me, we're going to go do rounds. I'll never forget that moment of just, what? Like I felt like a deer in headlights. I just grabbed my laptop and followed this guy around, and I had no idea what I was doing because no one taught me how to do anything. It was just this thing that I learned, and I was told constantly, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong, until I got it right. And it's these skills that you're going to learn in these core subjects that you just don't learn unless you're in industry. And it takes juniors, 3 months, 6 months, even a year to get your head around something like the pipeline that we keep mentioning. So these core subjects are really what I'm calling industry insider information. It's stuff that you simply can't find on YouTube or in books because it's things that people don't talk about and things that people in industry really do take for granted. You think of, naming everything in your scene, or asset management that's been mentioned a few times, versioning your files, like the iterations that Brandon talked about really early on, or even keeping track of all your files. No one's going to do a YouTube channel on how to, name your files correctly for asset management when they can do a YouTube channel on how to 3D model your face onto an Iron Man suit. It's just not seen as the fun, sexy side of it, but it's really what's going to set you apart, and it's going to make you much better artists for the future and getting into industry, because these core subjects have been designed to fill these gaps and to really elevate you for employability and success. But a lot of these subjects, I want to just quickly go over them. And I've written so many notes because almost every single one of these subjects has been mentioned in one way or another from everyone else who's talked today. So I'll start with the creative concepts and principles, which is the one in the middle. So we've got film and games, art and design, story and visual narrative, and lighting and cinematography. These are all core knowledge and skills that make up the ideal candidate. When you think of things like, lighting and cinematography, well, why would I need to do that if I'm doing effects? But Dan even mentioned, lighting is something that you need to do. Cinematography, that's required for storyboard artists, for layout artists, animation, comp, even virtual production. These are all core skills that are just going to make you a better artist. Brandon even mentioned, the programs and projects change. Theories don't. Design theories don't change. Art and design, lighting and cinematography, these are all core skills that are almost like, if you think of it in a 3D modeling or a creature concept, it's like the skeleton and the core muscles that you need to become a greater artist. Now, when it comes to industry concepts, processes and capabilities, this is kind of like my baby. This is where I feel really, really passionate about, because this is where you get that industry insider information. We think of industry overview, communication, problem solving, managing projects and creative assets, and then establishing business and leadership. We look at these projects, and at first glance, you could think, well, why would I come to CGSI to learn communication? Or, I could learn problem solving or business and leadership somewhere else. But like we've mentioned a few times, all these subjects are deeply contextualized with industry. So you're not just learning communication on face value. It's not about comms. It's about, how do you communicate when you work in a creative and technical team? How do you communicate your shot and your work? How do you know how long your shot's going to take? How do you talk about feedback, and how do you take feedback? Then with, industry, with that's that includes not just what a pipeline is and all the other things, it's also the transferable skills you'll learn beyond film, VFX, animation, and games. Problem solving. I'm grateful a few people have said this, because problem solving, especially when it comes to like 3D modeling, for me, because I did 3D modeling as well, and I've taught 3D modeling, I've always said 3D modeling is not creative, it's problem solving. And a lot of different disciplines have said that, effects and even games development, it really is a problem solving industry. So things like that. Then there's also creative assets. It's not just about how do you manage a project and its assets. How do you deliver those assets? How do you hand over those assets from one department to another? If we think of all the disciplines we've seen today, how does concept art go to modeling? How does modeling then go to rigging? How does rigging then go to animation, and so on and so on? It's all the bigger picture things that you just don't learn unless you're in industry. Then we have the capstone project. So a few people have mentioned the capstone, and I know it was mentioned in the chat as well. This is really where you focus on going from a student to an artist. It's kind of shaking off that shell, and it's working on everything you've learned in the previous, say, 1 to 2 years, and bringing that to a portfolio to get you into industry. And the 2 core subjects that we've paired with that have been really, really on purpose, because marketing yourself and stepping into industry, these are subjects that are going to help you get into industry. Lastly, I did want to mention that when it comes to these core subjects, they're called core because they're the core skills that you all need. And I want to go back to what the 3 J's said about getting a job in industry. If you think of any job ad out there, the hard skills, so the programs, whether it's effects or modeling or animation, is only half of the job ad. The other half is your soft skills, your interpersonal skills. And we think of what Jamie and Jess and Jeff just said, the key things they look for in candidates. Only one person mentioned the actual talent, the actual hard skills. The rest was collaboration, being nice, communication, ambition, passion, and all that sort of stuff. So the 4 subjects really is not only what sets the school apart, but it's going to set you apart from the candidates when you're applying for work, and you really are going to be able to hit the ground running. That's everything.
Outstanding, Kathy and Cheryl, and thanks for giving us an insight into that that sort of core side of the programs. So yes, you learn to be a technical specialist, and you learn those other skills that employers are looking for in order to hit the ground running in your graduate position. I'm now going to go across and talk about the community that happens at CG Spectrum. Jeff Duran, I'm going to pop across to you, given the fact that you're in industry, but you're also a CG Spectrum graduate, right? And maybe you can talk about this community that exists.
Yeah, so as mentioned, I graduated the game programming course here. Of course, it was before this new CGSI is now becoming a thing. So I did the course prior to that. But so when you become a student at CGS, one of the main things, I think the most valuable things you get access to is Slack, which is basically, if you don't know what it is, it's a chat based software where there's several channels similar to Discord, if you've ever used that. But within the Slack, you have access to literally every student, every mentor, everybody that is at CG Spectrum. And each department also has TAs, which are basically students that have at least gone through a couple years of, a couple levels of the courses, and have gotten to a level where they can in turn help others out. And so they are actually employed students by CGS to answer questions and help other students out and do fun things, provide events. There's challenges that happen, there's huddles that happen. And honest to God, I think huddles are probably one of the most valuable things you can get out of CG Spectrum, and it's very overlooked and underused, I believe. I myself participate in a lot of the huddles still to this day. So as a student, you'll probably, if you run into any of the programming huddles or even game design huddles, I try to join them as frequently as I can and give advice and help students and just chat. But also the current TAs are there to help you grow and expand on your knowledge. And even if you don't want to join a huddle to really, you don't have a particular question to ask, it's great just to see other people asking questions, because maybe something comes up that you didn't even think about and you still learn something as a result of just being there and being involved and participating. Plus, I think a lot of the recruiters and everybody else here will agree that networking is one of the most important things you can do in this industry, period. Getting to know people that will be in the industry is only going to help, especially going back to saying, be kind, be nice, if you are that kind, nice, generous, talented person, and you get to meet a lot of the other students or that maybe are further along on the track than you are, and they remember you when they get their jobs and they're in this studio and you're applying for their studio, and they can go, that guy was awesome, he was smart, or girl or whoever, they were smart, they were hardworking and very kind, and I would highly recommend them, coming into it. So I think again, the Slack is a very, very powerful tool, and joining this community and taking part of it. There's other things that happen within it. My company actually is a great example of the result of the CG Spectrum community. Now, I formed my company in 2019, so it was prior to when I started at CGS. But when I decided to jump into games and take that leap as a programmer and learn myself as a programmer, I had already had several years in the industry, but I'd never worked as a programmer. And so being involved in the community really helped me build my skills really quickly. There was actually no programming TA when I started. It was still pretty new. I was actually the first programming TA for CG Spectrum. So I can vouch for not having a TA was more challenging than now, having these people, because when I had I had my mentors, right, but they're all full-time employees at their current jobs, and they're busy, and time zones are also really weird. So it's just nice to have that extra person there to answer questions when you need them. But yeah, so we formed, when I graduated, I reached out to a couple students and we started collaborating and came up with some ideas, and the result is the game. We have about 30 people on our team right now, and I would say about 90% of them are former CG Spectrum, either graduates or current students that are involved, and we're working right now on producing a game, and we were invited to Steam Fest with our game up in February, so we're all working on a demo towards that end right now, and soon we'll be doing our first round of investment and trying to find publishers and all that exciting stuff. But yeah, that couldn't have happened if it wasn't for the CG Spectrum community. It's been really, really great. So
Thanks, Jeff. I think also similar to your point around taking charge and being invested in your own educational space, that community exists, but you can also be proactive and take charge of your involvement in that community. And I think often the best things in life come from those who take action and grab it with both hands and run. So that's there as an opportunity for people to get engaged with. We're coming up on the completion of our time, and I wanted to flip across to Marcus to give you an idea about what the onboarding process looks like. What kind of exists. Many things. I've been seeing a number of the questions be coming through. Some of them have been related to this onboarding process. So over to you, Marcus, to give us an idea as to this admissions process.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for introducing me. Look, we've really tried to make this admissions process as accessible and as easy as possible. So it all starts off by jumping onto our website and pressing that apply now button. From that triggers a request for application. It'll trigger a chat from me or one of the other members of our lovely admissions team. It'll be the opportunity for you to begin a dialogue you'll have a final opportunity to ask any questions or air any concerns that you do have. And we'll be able to walk you through anything that you are not too sure of just yet. If you don't have any questions, or you're ready to charge on and in, you're more than welcome to jump right into the full enrollment form. But we do want to have a chat with you just to get a sense of what your goals are, make sure that CG Spectrum Institute is the place for you. I'm confident that it will be. But yeah, it really is a simple process. As you'll make the request for application, we'll get in touch with you, we'll fill out a full enrollment form, and we'll go from there. It's a super simple, super quick process. There are a couple of things that you should note. We're happy to accept anyone abroad. One of the wonderful benefits of us being an online institution is that you can study with us from just about anywhere, provided you have a stable internet connection and the appropriate hardware. You can jump on from anywhere. We do have a couple of really brief, sort of entry requirements that you would have to cover. The two big ones to mention are, we have our academic prerequisites. So in Australia, the equivalent would be a senior secondary certificate. For those of you who aren't here in Australia, that would be the equivalent of year 12 completion. So whether that's a high school diploma, a GED, international baccalaureate, all of those things will meet our academic prerequisites. There is also one other thing that you'll need to be aware of if you don't come from an English-speaking country. The English language proficiency is a requirement that all of our students do need to meet. So generally that would be covered by study done at an institution wherein the primary language of instruction is English. If that isn't the case, we do accept a number of English tests, standardized English tests in lieu of that. So that's the IELTS, the TEFL, the PTE. They'll all work. If there are any other tests that you've taken and you're not too sure whether you do meet those requirements, feel free to get in touch with us and we can chat through with it. Outside of that, we don't really have any submission requirements apart from for our digital art bachelor. So in that case, if you want to study concept art or 2D animation with us, there is a portfolio requirement. We can have a chat more about what that might entail. If you should just an email during your application, we can talk about what specific skills you might need to showcase to get a successful application there. Otherwise, there's not too much you have to be too aware of then. If you wanted to get in for our term 1 or trimester 1 entry, we'd be looking to have your application in by, we don't have a hard cutoff date yet, but if you get it in by like the 15th, we'll say the 15th of January, 2 weeks before our courses start, that would be fantastic. Again, there's no hard cutoff date though. Again, there's not too much of an admissions process that we need to oversee. So there's no, you don't have to pay any fees. There's nothing convoluted. We don't have to, as long as you provide all of your appropriate documentation, we can get you started very quickly. For our Australian students, we do have tuition assistance available through Fee Help. So provided that you're eligible, we can have a chat about that. And it's a simple, we'll elect Fee Help as your selected payment option, and we will go ahead and we'll register you for that Commonwealth support. There will be an ECAF that you have to fill out. It's just a form that comes from the Department of Education, and it should be a relatively simple process. For our international students, we don't currently have Fee Help. You may not be eligible for that, but we can work out we do have a number of flexible payment options if that's something that you wanted to undertake. Look, I'm very sensitive. I'm very aware of the time sensitivity here, and I'd love a chance for us to get into Q&A. If you do have any questions about the onboarding and admissions process, our inbox is open 24/7. More than happy to answer any of the questions that you do have. But yes, you've had a brief taste of the caliber of industry pros that you'll be learning from if you choose to study with us here at CG Spectrum Institute. So I'm really excited to see your applications.
Cheers, Marcus. You might have noticed that he's an artist himself, so he'd be very happy to speak to any of you and answer any of those targeted questions that are in place. We do have an opportunity now just to sort of wrap up with a few pertinent questions. I did notice one coming through from Joseph as a general question, and maybe I'll pop across to you, Jeff Duron, about the games industry. A quick little insight into where it's heading.
Yeah, I mean it's a challenging question to answer because it's the great thing about the industry is it's ever changing, ever evolving, ever surprises happen constantly. But I see there being a uh, much more of a merge between the games industry and the film industry. I think you're going to start seeing that expand, especially with Unreal Engine. They're making a big stride towards sort of closing that gap between film and what was traditionally uh, uh, you know pre-rendered shots and things like that that you would do in film that are now being able to be handled on a real-time basis with nanite technology and their lighting system and lumen and all that other stuff. So it's going to be really interesting to see, especially myself, because as I said, we are a game industry, but we are a game company, but we are also a animation studio. So it's fun to see this one powerful tool that's it's starting to merge the gap between that, because at my core, I'm a storyteller. Whether it's games or animated shows, that's what I wanted to do at my heart, is tell these stories and whatever medium that makes sense for it. And with games especially, I like to play those very deep, lore-driven, character-driven stories, and I think you're going to start seeing a lot more merge between those in the industry very soon.
Outstanding. I think there's a question that's came through. I'm from the Philippines. Is it possible to enroll even when I'm in Southeast? Of course it is. You'd just be an international student. So that's there's no geographic restrictions on how you choose to enroll in the space. Yeah, cool. There's a particular question from Barack around Melbourne and programmer candidates. I think that's some targeted things that might be best dealt with offline. Might just see if there's anything coming in the last little moment before I bring a close to our open day.
I'll just hop in there, Baden, if you don't mind, because there's been a lot of questions posed about AI and its impact on the industry. So, and I get these questions all the time. So I can definitely field that, and anybody else can jump in. But people are worried that AI is going to be taking the jobs away. Particularly, there's been some questions for 2D, and I get a lot of that for 2D. And what I would say with that is certainly people are using it in production. I've used it in work that I've done for clients as a way of generating textures and certain really basic things. It is not the tool you may think it is. You can produce believable artwork, but it is very difficult to produce the exact thing that you want. For 2D artists, at least, and I'm sure this is the case for a lot of other disciplines, it's easier to speak with an artist who's trained, who understands what you want, and have them produce the work that you need. Now, they may, I have one student that actually works for a studio where they're happy that you use AI. There are pitfalls with that in terms of copyright, which we won't get into, and the way that they've scraped that information, which is a whole thing. But it is definitely something that in the future can be useful to I think everybody. But I don't see that it's going to just straight up replace creative people. If you were to completely rely on that, train it up in your own ecosystem, you're going to end up with very derivative products, right? And that may be okay for the person, or the company, but what's going to happen is slowly it's going to ramp down into something that's predictable and probably not that appealing long term. I think you can even see this at Disney, right? They've been kind of beating some of their IPs and art direction to death over time, and it's starting to affect them. And so a company that big, right, if they were to invest further in turning things into a derivative, predictable environment, you're going to see people kind of gravitate away from that, and you can already see it, right? So I would say, I could dive into that for hours on end, but I won't. I'd say that I wouldn't be afraid of it. I would say it's good to embrace it. Obviously, there's pitfalls with everything, but I think you're going to want to work with artists who know what they're doing, that can work with you creatively and get to the point faster than training an AI on what you want them to get. Yeah, so that's what I would say there.
I think if I can add to that as well, Brandon, I think you shouldn't let fear of a changing environment stop you from pursuing something that you're interested in as well. I mean, if you think about the film industry and the CG film industry, how much that has changed over the last 40 or so years, you know, going from basically nothing to extreme realism that we can do now. You know, everything is always changing and the tools that we use are always changing. And this is just another thing that we have to navigate and learn. And yeah, you know, you should jump in at any time and know that things are going to change, but don't let that stop you from starting.
Yeah, really great advice. Thank you so much. I can see that there are some questions coming in and they're being live answered by some of our panelists on the fly as we're going through. I might begin to bring our open day to a close. As we go through that, and those last few questions are being answered live as we go through, I'd like to just quickly recap what we've been through. We sort of started off getting an overview as to the industries that we have a focus in, and a bit about CG Spectrum. And I'd say to you that CG Spectrum Institute itself is a unique educator. We're a high-touch boutique educator. We have a very strong focus on the student experience, and we are of industry. We're not just for industry, we're of industry. And you see that in our heads of department. That makes its way all the way through all of our teaching staff, our tutors, our mentors, even into the people that are in leadership positions within the organization, all the way back to the founders of the business themselves, of the business itself. We are of industry, and I think that gives us a particular edge. We've been really excited to bring these new degrees to life and to launch them to the market. And we believe that they take the best of our technical capability and they blend it with those industry ready skills that will set you aside when you enter into the industry. We heard from 5 specialization areas and some of the unique aspects of them. You got a bit of an insight as to what those specialization areas were, what student sort of work looked like within that space, what career sort of focus points there might be, and also what the structure of the specialization looks like and the progression of those subjects as you go through completing the diploma level qualification through to the full bachelor. Then we had a really great insight into the industry on an industry roundtable, and thanks very much to the Triple J's, the Jeff, the Jamie, and the Jess, who gave us the words from industry as to what that looks like, what it looks like for a person entering the industry, what they look for, what a typical day in the life looks like, some pieces of advice. That was really cool to see. You then heard from Sherilyn and from Kathy about the core subjects, those industry ready subjects that are in place, and got some insights into what they look like. And they're sort of common across all of our discipline areas. We led into the discussion of the CG Spectrum community and the strength of that community and how it can really be used to advance your career, into the admissions with the amiable Marcus, and then finally sort of a wrap up around the Q&A. We've got all of those questions documented. If we haven't got to them, no doubt there'll be some finishing off at the end, and we'll get back in place. At the completion of this seminar, we will send out a communication to you so that you have a link to the recording of this open day. So if you wanted to dive back in and hear what was Scott Claus talking about when he was talking about Pocahontas, what was that? Whatever it might have been, so you can dive back in and have a bit of a look and go back. And certainly some links in there for your opportunity to be able to engage with us further, should you wish to go down that path. Can I thank you all for your investment of your time with us today? 2 hours is a long time. Depending on where you are in the world, this might be very late in the night, could be very early in the morning, it might be in the middle of a work day. So thank you so much for investing your time with us today. We hope that the information has been valuable, that you've been able to get a bit of an insight behind the scenes as to what the CG Spectrum Institute degrees are all about, how they might be distinct from other offerings that are in the market. Because we're a competitor in a landscape. There are other institutes that you could go to, other universities that you could go to that are offering good quality programs, and you might have just seen the nuances that we believe set us aside. And if that aligns with you and the way in which you want to study and the way in which you see your degree moving forward, we would love for you to be able to take the opportunity to engage in the application process, to have a bit of a conversation with Marcus to see whether we will meet your particular goals. So thank you all so much for being here. To the panelists, for spending your time. We love you so much. Thank you so much. And we look forward to engaging with you again in the future. Cheers for now.